All right, we're recording. Hey, Stephanie, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. This is a nice way to, end a week, end a
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah. Happy Friday. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're joining me all the way from Lisbon, Portugal, which I love. We were
Mhm.
there in the summer. It was super hot,
Ah,
but
you were here, and I was in San Diego. We were escaping the influx of summer travel. So,
that's what we heard. That's what locals do, apparently. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, no, but it was still beautiful. We were right in, I guess, downtown, or I don't know, that city
Yeah.
center. Yeah, it was
Well,
really nice.
next time you guys come, let us know, and you can stay in our place, and we'll
We'll
go
swap.
somewhere else
Yeah, we'll
because it was
swap.
just chilling open. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys can come to Vancouver. We'll swap if you want.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No, awesome. Yeah, really excited to have you here. We got to hang out at really briefly. It was my
yeah.
my second time at FinCon in New Orleans, my first time in New Orleans, and so yeah, we got to hang out with really briefly and
Awesome.
say hello. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was really nice, and now here we are. So yeah, really excited to get to know more about what you've built as a creator and a bit of your journey. So before we jump into that, though, just take a minute or so and just say hello to our audience of creators and
Yeah.
kind of what you do in the creator space.
Awesome. Happy to do that. So, my name is Stefanie Gonzalez. I am a Tejana, originally from Texas, Latina, born and raised in Texas, and really didn't spend a lot of time anywhere else outside of Texas until I started my career and started traveling in the supply chain and in IT. But I was in the supply chain for a little over a decade at the same company, one of the top three global tech companies, for 15 years. And I was really fortunate to get asked to move to Singapore in 2018 to build a team. And so when that happened, my husband, who was now a real estate agent, realized, okay, he absolutely supported me in my career and was going to follow me wherever I went because he loved to travel and he wanted to live abroad. That was one of our goals as a couple. Um, and so he had to make the decision on what he was going to do with his business whenever I took my role in Singapore. And it was really a blessing in disguise because he took his real estate license, was very much into Facebook ads, helping other real estate agents, create leads and drive lead generation for their businesses. And he built his operation and his business, his content creation business in a way. It's really a social media marketing company for real estate agents in Singapore. And so I got to see him through that journey. And I got to see him grow his team and see him thrive in his mindset of constantly learning. I think whenever you become an entrepreneur and a content creator, things are changing, especially with technology all the time. And so I got a front row seat to his journey.
Mm.
Mind you, he kept telling me, hey, Steph, you have this amazing experience growing this career as a woman of color. You see what companies are looking for, you know how to grow talent. And oh, by the way, we are now pursuing financial independence. You see how important that is to our lives and giving us choices. Why don't you think about telling your story? And at that time, he was seeding these ideas in my head, but I was very apprehensive about the idea of putting my face online. And I
Mm.
think a lot of that was because I had this job, I had this identity, and I had this persona and brand that I was building internal to the company. I felt like I was a little disloyal doing something else on the side.
Mm.
Um, and once I really got, I guess my feet wet with my real financial independence journey and what my real plans were for myself post my 9 to 5 career, I got a lot more comfortable in my own skin as my more authentic self. And I found myself just very willing to put my story out there
Mm.
because I found myself to be a very transparent leader and an honest leader when it came to having real conversations with my employees or other people that I mentored. Now this was an opportunity to do that outside of the walls in tech. And so, yeah, in 2021, when we had our second son, we had our first son right before COVID. We had our second son right after COVID.
Yeah.
I started the Women's Wealth Effect, just an Instagram account online, just to see if this type of work was going to resonate with me. And I was still working as a director, global director in supply chain, and doing that full time job. And I was doing this whole thing on the side. But I took part of my maternity leave to at least get it started, and I loved it. And the feedback I was getting from people was very positive. And so I really felt like my heart was being pulled at doing this full time faster. And not necessarily faster to go, build the company to this, mammoth faster. It was more so faster because I really enjoyed it. And I'm 1,000% type person. I'm
Hmm.
not going to be in something half and the other thing half. It's just, that's not my personality. And so, you'll see this in the content that I create. I have over a decade of planning and forecasting experience. And so I planned and forecasted a lot of scenarios for our financial independence journey. And you couldn't get me out of my spreadsheet to figure out how I was going to get out the door fast enough from my 9 to 5 job to do this full time. And so we made the decision that we had made enough progress for me to leave in April 2022. We moved to Portugal from Singapore at the time. And yeah, now we've been here for almost a year and a half. And we just moved last week outside of central Lisbon, but closer to the beach. So we're very excited. You are experiencing our new office. I'm so glad to have room.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Such an incredible journey. Yeah. It's nice to have, I guess, somebody that's already kind of done it. Like your husband's kind of showing you the ropes. Like, hey, this is
Mm-hmm.
the world of digital. And I mean, of course, your husband's gonna see the best in you and say, hey, you can do this. You don't have to be here in corporate.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything wrong with staying in corporate and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah, for the right reasons, you make the leap. So was there a bit of an overlap? Were you still in Dell, and then also building
Mm-hmm.
sort of, I guess at the time, a side hustle, or
Yeah.
did you leave completely and sort of like just rip the band-aid?
Well, there was a little bit of an overlap, but there wasn't a big overlap for me. And my situation and circumstance is a little different in the sense that we had become millionaires. We had
Mm,
reached 75% of our financial independence goal, right?
amazing.
And so when you think about let's just look at it like from a couple's perspective, right?
Yeah.
For Joe and I, we contribute to our household pretty much 50-50.
Yep.
And, what we needed to live off of that I quote unquote contributed to, we had already invested. I could live passively off of that money.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep
Amazing.
our expenses relatively low. So, and moving to Portugal helped that a bit, right? It's
Right.
not the lowest cost country, but it's a lower cost country, especially to Singapore.
Yeah.
And so, I started Women's Wealth Effect in August 2021 and I left April 2022. So it was actually pretty quick, really, in the grand scheme of things. I hear a lot of people have grown their side hustles for a couple of years, and I wasn't needing to replace income to an
Right.
extent. So I was very fortunate for that.
And that was pretty quick then. About a year
Hmm.
overlap.
Less than a year. Less
A
than a
year
year.
overlap.
Yeah.
What
Hmm.
was that like then? Because it was during the overlap, like you're almost kind of doing two jobs, and then
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
I'm sure there was a point where you're like, man, I can't wait to leave corporate because then I can really like double down and
Yeah.
probably like
Yeah.
5x, 10x your results, your growth.
It
What
is
was
a
what was
couple
going through your mind
things.
during that time?
Yes, you're taking me back there. One of the main reasons that I decided to leave was
Mm,
because I was very much, well, one, I had been doing planning for over 10 years.
mm,
I am a person that is happy when I'm challenged and I'm happy when I'm learning something new.
mm.
And I think as a content creator, that's kind of a critical skill set. Like you
Yeah.
have to be able, you almost have to thrive in that environment. And I stayed at Dell as long as I did,
Yep.
learning in different capacities as long as I did because of that.
Yep.
That being said, when you're in the supply chain, you're working in Asia, headquarters is in the US, and corporate in general has to figure this out. The amount of work that we had to put into just our jobs in general is a little ridiculous,
Right.
in all honesty. And I talk to women a lot now about holding boundaries, feeling comfortable about holding boundaries, and being unapologetic for it. Like you
Mm-hmm.
sign up for, in most cases, a 40-hour work week. And I understand that some jobs come with more,
Yeah.
but that doesn't need to be the long term, and it's not sustainable. It really isn't. So for me, that was a real challenge. So then I'm doing this side stuff on this side, and I was
Mm-hmm.
fortunate that I had, I was on maternity leave in August. I didn't get out of maternity leave until almost November. So I had November, December, and then like the first 4 months of 2022 that I was still working. Um, and it was a lot. It really
Mm-hmm.
was a lot. And at the time too, my husband and I were trying to start a YouTube channel, which is called Permission to Be Wealthy, and we're planning on picking that up again in 2024. And while we probably did a good dozen or so videos, we just had to get honest with ourselves and go, you know what, we got a lot going on. You're leaving your job. You've got women's wealth effect. We're going to move to another country. We got 2 little kids for this move. When we moved to Singapore, we had no kids, right? So a move with kids is totally different whenever it's just you and your partner.
That's right.
And oh, by the way, Dell wasn't paying for it. We were doing all of it. So I had to start getting very honest about just my capacity in general. And I knew that if I was going to do women's wealth effect, and if I really liked it, that Dell was going to quickly take a back seat in my heart. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's good to recognize. Actually, say out loud and hear out loud, actually. I think a lot of people kind of go through those thought patterns of like, yeah, I'm kind of, and what you said earlier was really interesting too, where, there might be, like there's this thing that you're sort of protecting, a bit of your reputation. I sort of, when you're working in corporate, I don't really want to put my face out there outside of anything else but my corporate identity. Yeah, for a number of reasons, I guess. Some people are like, well, are you, some these are things that people have, in discussions like, hey, if you're if you're starting a side hustle, are you not making enough at corporate with your job? Is that, it's kind of like, oh, do you need more money? Is this like,
and in all honesty, that wasn't the case, right? Like my boss would have come to me and been like, we're definitely paying you enough. And I'd be like, I know. And I think here's another interesting shift that I've observed since leaving. LinkedIn is becoming a bigger platform, and I think a stronger platform from a content creation and a social media in a way perspective, especially amongst leaders. And I see leaders making a honest effort at creating an actual presence, but it's very aligned to the work that they do, right? Mine was not to an extent, right? I mean, yes, it was developing women and giving them a specific set of experiences and tools to do so, primarily through financial independence in their career development. But it was very much going to be a second thing, another lane. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how these things blend over time and how people give themselves permission to do it. I think companies are going to have to think about, how they feel about it too.
Yeah.
I hope they embrace it.
Yeah, some companies are very worried, or they get kind of worried when they see personal brands, not let alone like side hustles. Right. Yeah. Like, oh, you started an Instagram account about, your passion. Like, oh, what's going on? Kind of like flags go up a little bit. Right. For some.
But here's the interesting thing about this. And I think about this a little bit through the lens of like, think of a football player. And I talk to Joseph about this all the time, my husband, because he played college football. But you think of a college football player and the universities that make tons of money on these individuals and their likeness.
Yeah.
Companies are doing the exact same thing by bringing amazing, talented people into their companies. And these people are waking up to the reality that they have equity in their own selves and their own brands. And so companies are going to have to figure out what that looks like. And I hope that they allow people to explore that, because if they don't, then they really start to shut people down. And in a way, right, I didn't want to be shut down. And I knew that if I started speaking more about how I felt in certain capacities, that I was going to meet more resistance than I was willing, honestly, to put up with. I decided to, take my career into my own hands. And while it is a risk, I'm excited about it.
I mean, it seems like you guys are thriving. It's like great to watch from an outsider's point of view. So I think I feel like you did the right thing here. So, no, that's awesome. What was what are some things, I'm sure there's a lot, but like 1 or 2 things that, from being in corporate, now that you're in the creator economy and you're a creator and you're, figuring out different, and you've figured it out, it seems like, different revenue streams, and I'm sure building a team and speaking and pitching, all these things. What's like 1 or 2 things that you did pick up from corporate that you're thankful for? Like, just being in corporate, it's made me really strong in this little section here, or these things.
I think that one of the first things, I started off in sales. I swore I was never going to take a sales job coming out of college, but I ended up in a sales job. And the one thing that as a marketing major coming out of school in 2006, that's all that was really a big deal at the time. So, I learned in my sales roles to really value the voice of the customer.
Mm, yeah.
You have nothing if you don't have something that's valuable for your customer.
Mm,
And so when I started this, I took probably a good handful of free coaching clients. Of course,
yep.
I was still working at Dell, so didn't have a lot of time, but I took free coaching clients on because number one, I wanted to understand like what kind of method did I want to use, what made sense, what feedback did they have, because that voice of the customer input was really important. And it still is now today, right? Like anytime I ask for a testimonial, I am genuinely asking for a testimonial because I want to know what I can do better,
Mm,
or I want to know what you're absolutely loving and I should never think about like sunsetting in my business, right? And so that is huge. I think the other things, it was really, I think, luck. But I love numbers. They don't lie. I'm an emotional person, but when it comes to data, it is something that helps me center and gets me grounded, right?
mm,
And so I approach personal finance through the lens of looking forward, forecasting some assumptions, having a range. And there's tons of tools online that do that. But people also need guidance, understanding how these tools work, how the math works, so that they trust them more, right? I spent a lot of time, even in my supply chain career, trying to launch new algorithmic tools to better plan and forecast. And our planners hated them because they didn't understand what spit out on the other side. And I can understand why people are like talking to their financial advisors and like, you're telling me that my plan's going to be this, but I have no idea why that is. Women that come through my program don't have that problem because I've taken that decade's worth of experience and I apply it there. So those are two things. If I think of the third, and I think it's really leadership
yeah.
and wanting inherently to collaborate with people.
Mm,
I was a SNOP leader at Dell,
mm,
and my main job was getting people together and getting them on the same page and getting them to talk and setting their egos aside and figuring out how to go solve big, hairy business problems. And I carry that with me now because now I get to collaborate and work with other content creators because there is so much work
right.
to do in the personal finance space, in particular for women, that we are really doing ourselves a disservice if we do it by ourselves. And so I was so excited when Bernadette approached me about co-hosting on her Crush Your Money Goals season this past season, because while I wanted to do a podcast and I was going to go off and do it, she offered me the opportunity to not only learn that skill set, but have fun doing it along the way with
Yeah.
her and talking to people all across the globe. And I really feel like that is what it's all about in this space.
Yeah. I love that you guys did that collaboration. That was really awesome. It's a great
Yeah.
chemistry between you and Bernadette. It seems like you guys have been friends for years. But
And
from
that's
what I
crazy,
understand,
right?
you guys met at VidCon, a previous VidCon, from what I understand. So
We met face to face at FinCon in Orlando,
FinCon,
but
yes.
we
Mhm.
knew we had met virtually when I was toying with the idea of leaving Dell. And I sent her a
Mm.
DM, some response to some post, and I was like, "You're absolutely speaking my language, whatever, whatever." And she was like, "Here's a Calendly link. Set up 15 minutes with me. I'd love to chat with you." And she was the first person to just genuinely show interest from a creator standpoint in what I was thinking about doing.
Yeah.
And we kept in touch ever since then, and it's like we've known each other for a really long time.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You know, it's interesting that
Yeah.
that Bernadette did that. I was on a call with another creator yesterday. It's just this creator is kind of up and coming, and I want just to connect with him. Like, hey, you're doing some awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And we hopped on a 15-minute call, and at the end, he's like, hey, Rob, like, to be honest, I really wanted to know what the catch was, and there's no catch. I was like, there's no catch. I just want to
Yes.
connect with you, and it's
Yes.
really interesting that people have their guards up when I'm sure some people there is a catch, right? There is a
Sure.
catch.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you go into this space knowing that one of your main objectives needs to be over delivering and over delivering more value than your client or person ever expected,
Yeah.
it's going to come back to you tenfold.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it sure
I
will.
think that if we take that approach, granted, time is a thing for most people, right? Whenever you need to make money and But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
been
good.
cool.
I'm so glad that you guys did that. So is that continuing? Or that's for a season? That's for a season. The
Well, it was
collaboration.
first season. We are in the like literal conversation right now about, do we continue indefinitely or do we do a season? And
Hmm.
you know, I don't know which route we're going to go, to be honest. I think at the beginning of the year for personal finance creators, it's a very busy year because it's New Year's resolutions, tax season, and a lot of people are very much in the mode of saying, like, I need help with my money. The
Yeah.
second half of the year kind of tailors off. People were spending their money on like Thanksgiving and Christmas and
Right.
like whatever
Right.
else, and school starting, and the lull of the summer. And so, yeah, we'll see what we decide to do, but I'm very excited
Yeah, that's
to
awesome. That's awesome.
to
Well,
make
we'll
that
have the links
decision.
to that podcast as well in the show notes with everything else. Okay, I want to kind
Yeah.
of transition a bit because we have a lot of content creators that are
Mhm.
listening to the podcast, watching the podcast on YouTube, and really the main things that we really kind of talk about here. Well, one of the main things is revenue streams
Mhm.
and different revenue streams. There's a
Yeah.
lot of shiny objects for creators out
Mhm.
there, right? Affiliates, courses,
Mhm.
memberships,
Mhm.
merch, speaking
Mhm.
gigs. I'd love to hear, kind of take us back to the beginning of your creator journey. What were the revenue
Mhm.
streams that you first launched? And then we'll get
Yeah.
into kind of where you are currently. But yeah, in the beginning,
Yeah.
what were you kind of experimenting with, or yeah, which revenue streams?
Yeah. In the beginning, it was very much one-on-one coaching, and that was my revenue stream at the beginning. And it was really scary. I was like, is anybody going to take me up on this? Like, this is going to work. And, I thought I offered three specific things, like just a 45-minute session, a 60-minute session with you get a plan, some level of a plan for me after 60 minutes, or you could buy a package, right, of 5 sessions, and you get a specific discount, right, for buying a bundle. And
Got it.
majority of people bought the 5 sessions. I was really surprised,
Mm,
whenever I launched that, and that was in August 2022. Um, and again, it was still in the vein of trying to work with people one-on-one to get a better sense of, is the one-on-one coaching what I'm going to continue to do, or
yeah.
am I going to try to create some type of program? In my mind, Rob, I knew I needed to create a program
Yeah.
because I live in Portugal,
Right.
right? And I have 3 to 4 hours of prime time that
Right.
I'm willing to spend
Yeah.
with people in the US.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not staying on calls late at night anymore. Like, that is, I have created some boundaries,
That's great. That's
and
healthy.
they're boundaries.
Yep.
And so, yes, I will have a couple of calls, maybe one or two every other week or so.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to create a schedule where I am not enjoying my life
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. No, that's smart. So coaching, really
Mm-hmm.
straightforward. I think that's great. Also, you get to learn your audience and what their pain points are, and then you can kind of think through what
Mm-hmm.
programs you want to build. I'm assuming. Where were you promoting that? What channels were you focused on? Again, shiny objects of where to build your audience. So, where were you?
Sure.
Where were those calls coming from? What was the source of those calls?
Yeah. Yeah, I started my journey primarily on Instagram,
Instagram.
right?
Okay.
And I think Instagram has just changed in general over time, and
Mm.
primarily even in the time that I started to now. And I definitely had a lead magnet, right? I had a free budget tracker at the time, and so that's what was allowing me to build my email list. So that is one thing that I definitely did at the very beginning, and I've spoken to so many people that haven't, and it's such a lost opportunity, right? Instagram goes down, Meta makes some decision. I'm in Europe. There's a big lawsuit right now with Meta in Europe, right? And
Oh, yeah.
I could be impacted, right,
Right.
through whatever is decided by being here. And so I have to be able to take my business into my own hands and not rely on social media to an extent, right?
Right.
And so from that standpoint, the email list was a really important thing. While I didn't necessarily have like a newsletter rhythm, and I'm working on that now, I at least wanted to be able to bring my audience somewhere and give them updates on what's been going on, right, in this space. So um, that was the beginning.
That was the beginning. That was the beginning. I'm just showing. If you guys are watching the video version of this, there's great 3 lead magnets, really straightforward from Instagram, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
building your list, and I'm sure then down that funnel, then those schedule your coaching calls kind of happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say this, like I've recently over the last I'd say 2, 3 months, those three like pinned
Mm-hmm.
items at the top of your Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
I've really started thinking more strategically about that. It's not
Right.
like your most watched reel. It's where do you want your client to start? What helps them get to know you?
Yep.
And like what is the thing that is like the thing you want to put in front of them right now that's going to continue to take them down your funnel?
Yeah.
And I've seen some really interesting examples of what could be there. And so I've tried to change that up a little bit
Yeah.
this last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, really smart, really smart. It's direct to Instagram and then then working them down your funnel.
Mhm.
So now you've got coaching. This was not too long ago actually. You said August 2022. That's just a little over a year ago. So
Mhm.
well done
Mhm.
with what you've built
Mhm.
here.
Oh,
So
I've had a
you
lot. I've done a lot of weird things since then. So yeah.
well, you got to share. You got to share at least one weird thing that you've tested.
Well, I say weird, right? It just feels like it's been like very fast. It's always
Yeah,
it's always been very purposeful, right?
of course. Yeah.
Um, I think coming out of FinCon in Orlando, I was already working on another lead magnet. And here's the thing that's been top of my mind,
Hmm.
and it goes back to this time thing. I'm not going to have 2-hour webinars at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
US time. I'm not. And most of the time that I have calls, they're 9 a.m. CST. They're
Hmm.
always that time because it's 3 p.m. my time. It's before I pick up the kids, and then the rest of my night is what it is.
Yep.
And so my master classes are always at 9 a.m. CST. My group coaching calls are always at that time, very rarely on the weekend. So what I tell my audience, I tell my clients is I am like a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
You're going to spend some time with me, and it needs to be on your calendar, and you're taking some paid time off, right?
Yep.
Or you block your calendar, whatever you decide to do, and everything's going to be recorded for you to come and experience after the fact. But if you're really serious about wanting to get some time with me, it's going to be at 9 a.m. CST. And so knowing that, I knew that I had to think a little creatively about my lead magnet and putting my face and in front of my audience in a way that they could continue to get to know me, understand how I worked and operated. And so after FinCon in 2022, I created my free mini course, which is called Kickstart Your Relationship with Money. And it's 6 modules. Every module is less than 5 minutes. Most of them are like 2.5. So it's a very like quick fire course,
Yep.
less than 30 minutes. You can understand your budget, debt effectiveness, compound interest, what expense ratios are, why women need to invest, and some specific scenarios around your money. Or money mindset is the other one. And it's a good starter for someone who's like, I don't know how to start. I don't know what this even means. Like, what is FIRE? And it is a video course. So you see me, you get some of my projection spreadsheets out of the course. It's actually a very rich course. At some point, it'll be a small, like paid lead magnet type course. But right now it's free.
Yeah.
And so I launched that, and then I eventually launched my free planner. But the planner takes some hand holding. So now I teach that as a masterclass.
I love it. I love it. So that's really the evolution of it then. Yeah, I guess this is something that all creators I think should think about is how do you leverage on demand and sort of self-serve, especially at the top of the funnel, because you don't want to be. I mean, for you it's a time zone thing, but I think even if it wasn't, like even if you're based in the U.S., you should think of how to use technology to serve more people at
How
the
do you
top of the funnel.
scale? Yeah.
Yeah, and then because I think as you go down the funnel, there's more access to you. That's like knowledge, but like
Absolutely.
access. I think that's what's limited, right? It's
Absolutely.
time. So, I like how you're building that. Okay, so now fast forward. You've got the email list. You've got a course. You're also doing still coaching and consulting.
I was doing that at the time, yeah.
Coaching and consulting. And then sort of what's the horizon looking like? What's 2024? We're recording this 2023, so next 12 months.
Yeah. So we're definitely in 2024 planning right now. And one of the other things to like, what do I bring from my work is you have to plan.
Yeah.
You have to like really sit down and plan. And you don't see this right now, but we literally just bought this like crazy big whiteboard from IKEA that stands on wheels and it's like really cool. So I'm excited to plan on this thing this year. Bernadette and I obviously did this season with Crush Your Money Goals here in the fall.
Yeah.
So we have a decision point to make there, and that's still open right now. when I said I have a master class, this master class is an hour and a half, and it is the lead, like the real, like firm lead magnet to my Women's Wealth Investing Effect program. So
Gotcha.
last year in January, I did actually launch a full course, right? So it's over 20 videos. At the time, you actually got a one-on-one session with me, like a dedicated one-on-one session with me. And then you got weekly group coaching calls for 6 to 8 weeks. And it was great. A lot of really good feedback. It's nice whenever you do these small group coaching cohorts, because these women really get to know each other really well, and they want to be around each other, and they create community. And so I focused on that at the beginning of the year last year. And so that will come up again in 2024, but it's going to be a year-long program.
Gotcha.
You're still going to have the 6 to 8 week intensive, but then the last 3 quarters of the year, we'll have a quarterly group coaching call, and we'll have a quarterly guest speaker that is an expert in a very specific field related to career and personal finance. Things like trust and estate planning, side hustles. I now invest in covered call ETFs. I think that's a deeper dive, type of element in your investing journey. And so we'll bring someone from that perspective. And so the feedback I got from majority of my clients was, this is great. When can I meet with you again in 6 months or a year? And so I'm trying to make sure that is, the first year I think is really critical when you're doing something like this. It's habits. It's making sure that you have the right questions answered, et cetera. And so this year the program will be a year, and we're actively enrolling for that right now.
That's amazing. That's exciting. It's great that you guys are doing that. And then more conferences, FinCon again, I'm sure, other conferences.
More conferences, I purposely didn't. Yes. This year is my year to say, like, I'm going to really do I'm going to make an honest effort to speak at conferences this year.
Yeah.
And so I will definitely do a go at trying to speak at a few conferences. I am picking up more speaking and learning sessions for corporations and stuff this year too. So I actually have something on Sunday for another academy that I'm doing. And then Web Summit actually gave me a lot of opportunity to meet with some people at different companies to speak with their organizations. So yeah, I think doing a little bit more of that.
More of that. Yeah,
course.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, it's great when Web Summit is in your hometown. Your hometown now.
Yeah.
So
I never thought that was going to be the case. Yeah. Last year I went, a friend of mine spoke at Web Summit, and she invited me as a guest. I had no idea what the thing was. And then this year I went again, and they have a women in tech specific section, and it's like, that's my avatar.
That's you right there.
I will be there.
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, I want to ask you, as we kind of wrap up here, I want to ask you, you work with your husband as well. He's also a digital entrepreneur, which is amazing. Power couple for sure. So what's that like? What's that like working with your husband? I'm sure you guys both work from home, and the dynamics of that as well.
Yeah, I tell people about this story specifically when it comes to pursuing financial independence and actually reaching a level of financial independence to leave your job. And we spent a lot more time together. I mean, we used to laugh and joke around, and it would be like, Mommy's going to the dungeon, and it was my home office, and I was in the office all day. No one saw me, and then I'd come out for dinner, and I'd go back in until midnight in the evening. And so now Joe and I see each other all the time. We can take the kids together to school or pick them up all the time. And now, while we do get to do a lot of that, we are realizing that we need to get a lot more regimented about who is doing what, not who needs, but who is doing what, because he does a great job at being a present father and helping me, and obviously being an incredible mentor to me in my business. And I try to support him in all sorts of other ways too. And I think because we genuinely want to put our best foot forward and our best effort, we kind of step on each other's toes, and we're like, why don't you just go bathe the kids and leave us alone, and you go do something else, and that's okay. And so at the beginning of last year, we did a little bit more work around, because we just needed a schedule, so that he could go work out or I could go work out, and just get through our day and be productive. And so, yeah, I think we've been navigating that over the last year to just enjoy our time together, and at the same time give ourselves the ability of being our own thought leaders in our own selves and in our own businesses the way that we need to.
Yeah.
And I know he needs that type of schedule like I do.
Hmm.
I'm the schedule person. I will create a calendar and I will stick to it.
Stick to it.
And I've had to learn how to be flexible living in Portugal. But yeah, I think from that standpoint, I tell people if you're going to retire, you're going to spend more time with your significant other, like at the age of 45, you're not 65 anymore.
Hmm.
You got a lot more time in life to experience together. So you
Amazing.
better damn well like hanging out with each other or figure out ways that you really can connect because you got a long life and it's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's great. But some people don't know what that is going to look like for them. And they really have to have an honest conversation with themselves about it. So, yeah.
That's
We've
so
been so
true.
busy that we have things to work on, but I
Yeah.
feel like the next coming year is going to be a year where we just get to enjoy each other a little bit more and get more creative because we've got a bit more space and we'll have some more stability in
That's so
our
true.
schedule.
Yeah. No, it's so true. It's actually really true. That's a reality that people don't think about. Is if you have this financial independence, you're actually kind of fast forwarding life a little bit to a life where it's just you and your partner,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
usually happens when you retire and the kids move out. And so now you're
Yeah.
experiencing that in your 30s or maybe 40s, and um, it's just like, hey, there's no kids, which is typically what you're both
And
working towards.
we have ours. They're
Yeah, yeah,
little.
yeah.
They're still 4 and 2,
They're
right?
still yeah.
Is
So
you
it
know,
it is
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting, good insight there. Okay, I'm gonna land the plane here, but before we go, I'd love for you to just share, because you made this shift from corporate to full time creator. What's one advice that you have for anybody out there that's sort of on the fringe, sort of just like, man, my heart is not here anymore. I love doing this side hustle. I
Sure.
really want to turn this into my full time gig. That's
Yeah.
one advice that you have from your own journey.
Yeah. I would really ask that individual to sit down and really think about the skills that they've acquired over time. Most of us have been in our careers navigating some really, really cool skills that will translate into our next great thing that are really amazing and super marketable, right? For me, it was planning and forecasting, leadership, and I'm a communicator, right? I love to communicate and I love to work with people. And so, of course, I have my own inherent experience. But I think sometimes people feel like, oh, I got to go create this side hustle and it needs to be like something completely different than what I do right now. And that's not necessarily true, right? It could really be something that is in the realm of like in your realm, but more authentically you and with your stamp on it, right? And so, and I think that's still, shifting for me a little bit. The career piece keeps coming up as like, hey, I'm over here. You haven't really been very purposeful with me yet. Like, what are you going to do with me? Because I've gone very much into the financial independence lane first. But I would really ask someone to sit down and go, like, what am I really good at? What do I like to do? What do I get excited about? Don't go off and try to learn something so off in the beginning that you're not only learning how to be a creator and a business owner, but you're learning this completely different skill that's a lot of time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice. Don't just learn one new thing, which is basically how to run a business. Just take the skills that you already have and repurpose it,
Yeah.
essentially, almost
Yeah.
right into
Yeah.
this new thing. Yeah, that's amazing. Beautiful. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. This has been really good. Getting to know
Thank
you a little bit
you.
more in your business. Where can people connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, maybe even work with you directly?
Yeah, so you can always find me on Instagram at Women's Wealth Effect. I'm also on LinkedIn at Stefanie Gonzalez, Stephanie with an F, Gonzalez with a Zales. And if you go to www.womenswealtheffect.com, you will get the full set of details on how to join the 2024 Women's Wealth Investing Effect program. And if you have any questions, let me know. I think it's really important for us to get honest with ourselves about our money sooner than later, because at some point, life is going to hand you a situation or circumstance that says you and your money have to get in the front seat together and figure out what to do. You'd much rather be in the situation to understand what's going on with your money than be forced to understand what's going on with your money. So yeah, that's Week Money.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll have all the links in the show notes and the descriptions.
Sure.
And Stefanie, thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. So, talk to you later.